Welcome back to the Deep Dive, the place built to cut through all the noise and bring you the most compelling, honestly, mind-bending insights we can find, pulled directly from the deepest research stacks.
And today we are really taking on a mission defined by pure enigma.
We're launching a kind of global expedition exploring four major mysteries that continue to fundamentally defy any simple explanation. We're drawing from sources that span, remote jungles, desolate frozen continents, and, well, suburban nightmares.
It's a huge scope. And we're touching the very boundaries of knowledge itself. For you, the learner, the sources we're sharing here they're so much more than just exciting stories.
Right.
They represent the current edge of scientific persistence, they highlight some really strange psychological phenomena, and they challenge the shifting definition of what is even possible on this planet. We're dealing with case studies at the edges of biology, archaeology, parapsychology, and even astrobiology, all within Earth's physical bounds.
Exactly. And we have let's say, an ambitious itinerary. We're starting with a potential surviving dinosaur hidden deep in the Congo swamps, the legendary Mokele-Mbembe.
From there, a total pivot.
A dramatic pivot, yeah. We're trekking through the historical tragedy of Colonel Fawcett and his search for the lost city of Z in the Amazon. From there, we take a sharp turn into the controversial, highly contested horror story surrounding the Amityville house in New York. And finally, we will end our dive 2.5 miles beneath the Antarctic ice, contemplating the profound astrobiological puzzle of Lake Vostok.
It's such a diverse set of locations, but the theme that ties them all together is, well, it's universal, isn't it? It's the human and often in desperate drive to know what's hidden.
Whether that secret is concealed by nature's vastness, the slow march of time, or some kind of profound historical trauma. Absolutely. We have a lot of ground to cover, or maybe I should say a lot of ground under the ground to explore. So let's not wait. We're heading straight to the heart of Africa.
Okay, let's unpack this. How can a creature believed to be extinct for 65 million years still roam the Earth? So our first stop is the Lake swamps of the Congo Basin. And we need to paint a picture here because this is one of the most hostile and geographically challenging places on the entire planet.
Right. When people say unexplored territory, this is what they mean. This is the real deal.
It's an environment where the canopy is so thick that sunlight barely hits the forest floor, and the air is it's thick with moisture and heat. It slows human progress to a crawl. It's a perfect hiding spot.
A perfect hiding spot. And the secret it's supposedly hiding is Mokele-Mbembe.
So where does this story even come from?
Well, the cultural roots of this story run deep. For centuries, the local Lingala tribes have maintained this highly consistent oral tradition about this creature. The name itself, Mokele-Mbembe, is often translated to the one who stops the flow of rivers, which is a pretty powerful name.
It's so important because that name, it doesn't just describe a monster, it describes a force of nature. It's a creature of such immense size and power that it literally disrupts the essential infrastructure, the waterways that these communities rely on for everything.
And the physical description, which you said is consistent across generations, what are they actually describing?
This is what makes the claim so compelling to outsiders. It aligns disturbingly well with a type of sauropod dinosaur. Think of a medium-sized, maybe semi-aquatic cousin of a brachiosaurus.
So the long neck, the big body.
All of it. Locals describe it as massive, sometimes comparable in size to an elephant. It has a long, flexible, serpentine neck, a thick, muscular tail, and very specifically, smooth, brownish-gray skin. Not the scaled hide we usually associate with reptiles.
That detail about the skin seems really specific.
It's one of many. What's fascinating here is the reported behavior, which is detailed enough to be considered, almost like biological data. They describe a specific diet, a preference for a particular vegetation called the malumbo plant.
An herbivore, then?
It suggests it is, yes, or maybe an omnivore with a dominant plant diet. But crucially, they also describe a highly aggressive temperament. This creature reportedly targets and kills hippopotamuses.
Really? A hippo? Those are some of the most dangerous animals in Africa.
Exactly, and the tribes say it kills them because they're territorial rivals for dominance of the deep, watery pools. This specificity, the diet, the size, the rivalry with known megafauna, it lends significant weight to the idea that these people are describing a real observable animal, not just some vague, shapeless mythological beast.
Okay, but this is where I get stuck. If this thing is elephant-sized, how has it remained hidden? We have satellites, we have drones.
That's the core conflict, the biological challenge. The environment is the perfect accomplice for concealment. We are talking about 55,000 square miles of virtually impassable swampland. The water levels are constantly fluctuating, which means tracks or trails get washed away almost immediately.
And the canopy you mentioned earlier.
It prevents any clear satellite or aerial photography. You just see a green carpet. On top of that, the logistical challenges are enormous. Organizing a long-term expedition capable of carrying the gear you'd need, sonar, deep diving equipment, high-powered photography, it's astronomically expensive. And then you have to maintain it against disease, heat, humidity.
So it's not as simple as just flying a drone over it.
Not even close.
No.
And we cannot underscore this enough. New species of mammals and insects are still being cataloged in this exact region today. If the environment can conceal entirely new species of known sizes, it certainly has the capacity to conceal a handful of reclusive, maybe very rare megafauna.
That context is vital. So this was a local legend for centuries. When did it break out and become a global search?
That happened in 1913. The catalyst was a German explorer, Captain Freiherr von Steinzee-Lossnitz.
And what did he do differently?
Unlike a lot of explorers of his time, he didn't just dismiss the local stories as folklore. He meticulously documented the accounts from multiple Lingala sources, and critically, he reported finding these massive, inexplicable tracks in the mud. That report brought Mokele-Mbembe out of local legend and onto the map for Western cryptozoology. His official documentation lent it a kind of academic credence it never had before.
And that set off the race. The sources confirm over 30 organized expeditions have since gone into the Lake swamps. Many came back with nothing, but a few came back with these ambiguous yet compelling stories that just kept the hope alive.
Let's talk about those specifics, because they are tantalizing. In 1980, an American engineer named Herman Regusters claimed he not only saw the creature, but that he photographed it.
And what did the photos show?
Well, unsurprisingly, they were dismissed by many as indistinct blobs. You know the type, blurry, distant, dark, but they do fit the description of a large, long-necked creature moving through the water. It's not proof, but it's just enough to make you wonder.
And then there's the 1983 incident, which is, it's just infuriating.
Oh, it's perhaps the most frustrating near miss in all of cryptozoology. A biologist, Marcelin Agnagna, a professional scientist with training and observation, reported seeing the creature at Lake Telly for a full 20 minutes. He stated, unequivocally, that what he saw was a large animal that did not resemble any known African fauna.
20 minutes. That's an eternity for an observation, so where's the film?
And this is the detail that makes cynics roll their eyes and believers pound the table. His camera, a piece of professional equipment, mysteriously malfunctioned at the precise moment he tried to film it.
Come on. Really?
That's the claim. The source material says it was an equipment failure due to the extreme humidity and dampness, which is a common issue in that environment. But whether it was accidental or not, the result is the same. No definitive proof.
So the mystery persists. It's fueled not just by these tantalizing sightings, but by the genuine fear of the local people who, to this day, avoid these waterways after dark. They believe implicitly that it exists.
And it forces us to balance this high local belief against the low probability required by evolutionary timelines. I mean, for a sauropod to have survived the mass extinction 65 million years ago, it would need a viable breeding population. Paleontologists estimate that would require hundreds, if not thousands, of individuals to avoid inbreeding and extinction over that time.
And thousands of elephant-sized creatures hiding out, even in the Congo. That's a stretch.
It's an enormous stretch. So either this remote location is a perfect evolutionary time capsule hiding a biological miracle, or the consistent sightings are rooted in misidentification. Maybe large aquatic mammals like manatees or crocodiles seen at a distance, warped by fear and cultural expectation.
It remains the perfect biological riddle.
It does. And that kind of riddle, where intuition is pitted against scientific consensus, leads us perfectly into a historical mystery where the seeker paid the ultimate price, only to be vindicated nearly a century later.
We leave the deep swamps of Africa and move to the dense, unforgiving canopy of the Amazon for a quest that became an obsession, the search for the lost city of Z.
First, we have to establish the stature of our central figure, Colonel Percy Fawcett. He wasn't some whimsical crackpot. He was a serious figure.
Right. His reputation is key to this whole story.
It is. He was a decorated British military officer, an accomplished surveyor, and he spent years mapping uncharted territory for the Royal Geographical Society. When he spoke, the academic world had to listen, even if they vehemently disagreed with his central thesis.
And his thesis was, for the early 20th century, completely radical. His mission was the search for Z, an ancient, sophisticated pre-Columbian civilization he believed was hidden deep in the Amazonian basin.
Which flew in the face of everything they thought they knew. At the time, the prevailing, and let's be honest, culturally biased archaeological belief was that the Amazonian soil was too poor, the environment too difficult, to support anything more than scattered, small, and so-called primitive nomadic tribes.
And Fawcett directly challenged that environmental determinism. He believed something much grander was there.
And he had clues to back up his obsession. He had made physical discoveries on earlier expeditions, pottery shards of remarkable quality and intricate design, pieces that suggested centralized production and craftsmanship far beyond what contemporary archaeologists thought was possible for that region.
And there was more than just pottery, right?
Oh, yes. He also found a mysterious stone idol covered in cryptic, undecipherable inscriptions, hinting at a forgotten written language or symbolic system. But the real ignition point for his final fatal quest was a crucial document, Manuscript 512.
Okay, tell us about this manuscript.
This document, which dates back to 1753, was written by a Portuguese explorer. And this explorer claimed to have found the ruins of a massive stone city in the interior of Brazil. The account was incredibly detailed. It described arched gateways, wide plazas, statues, and evidence of a sophisticated culture with written hieroglyphics.
So this wasn't just jungle hearsay.
Not at all. This was a historical, detailed blueprint of a lost metropolis that described exactly the kind of planned stone architecture Fawcett believed existed. It validated his entire controversial theory. He believed the people who built this were advanced, maybe survivors of a cataclysm who moved inland, preserving their knowledge.
And this dedication led to the journey of 1925.
The tragic journey. Fawcett, who was 58 at the time, set out with his eldest son, Jack, and Jack's friend, Raleigh Ramel. They were heading into the remote Mato Grosso region of Brazil, targeting the upper reaches of the Xingu River Basin.
And the sources are clear. The warnings were relentless.
Absolutely. Indigenous tribes, who knew that land far better than any Western explorer, cautioned him repeatedly about the fierce Indians guarding the territory. Fawcett knew the dangers, but his philosophical drive to prove that the Americas held civilizations as complex as any in Egypt or Mesopotamia, it just overrode any sense of caution.
So what was the last anyone heard from them?
The last known communication we have from the party came from a place they grimly named Dead Horse Camp. This was in late May of 1925. Fawcett's message was characteristic of him. Optimistic, determined, suggesting they were crossing the final cultural barrier and entering unmapped territory. And then, just silence. The jungle simply swallowed them whole.
And the aftermath of that disappearance is almost as tragic as the disappearance itself.
It really is. It turned Fawcett's search into an absolute graveyard. Over the subsequent decades, the hunt for Z became secondary to the hunt for Fawcett. More than 100 would-be rescuers, driven by fame, altruism, or that same adventurous spirit, perished in the jungle trying to find him or his party.
Why was it so hard to find any trace?
The problem was the constant stream of conflicting, sensational claims that surfaced. There were reports of finding bones, personal possessions, alleged eyewitnesses who said the group was killed by hostile tribes, or even stories that they had gone native and joined a tribe. But crucially, none of these claims could ever be confirmed or definitively reconciled. Fawcett's ultimate fate remains a mystery rooted in ambiguity and the deep inaccessibility of the jungle.
And this is where the story takes this incredible, ironic twist. For decades, Fawcett was relegated to the status of an eccentric, a romantic dreamer who was just too trusting of old manuscripts. But modern technology, it changed everything.
Using modern LiDAR technology, that's light detection and ranging, we have finally confirmed that Fawcett was not crazy. It's important to understand how LiDAR works to appreciate why it was the game changer he needed.
So it's more than just a picture from the sky.
Much more. LiDAR involves flying an aircraft with lasers that shoot thousands of pulses of light per second down to the ground. The system then measures the return time of each pulse. Because it can fire so rapidly, it can penetrate the dense, multi-layered Amazonian canopy. Instead of seeing a green blanket, the pulses detect slight variations in ground elevation, even changes of only a few feet, that indicate human manipulation of the landscape. It digitally strips away the centuries of jungle growth.
And what did the scans reveal under that category?
They confirm the existence of massive earthworks, complex road systems, geometric settlements, defensive structures, and agricultural systems that supported millions of people across vast areas of the Amazon. These were highly sophisticated pre-Columbian civilizations.
So exactly the kind of advanced culture Fawcett envisioned when he coined the term Z.
Exactly. He was right. He was just tragically ahead of his time. He was decades ahead of the technology required to prove the environmental determinism theory wrong. The sophistication he sought was absolutely real, hidden not by myth, but by the relentless growth of the jungle.
So the lost city of Z may not have been a single stone city, like in manuscript 512, but the massive, complex civilization he was searching for was real. His historical conviction was vindicated, a century too late for him.
And the vindication of that historical tragedy, where a known location concealed a historical secret, now transitions us to a completely different type of mystery. One where the location is very well known, but the events within it are fiercely debated, resting at the intersection of trauma, money, and media saturation.
We move from the forgotten ruins of the Amazon to the very recognizable address of 112 Ocean Avenue in Amityville, New York. We shift now from the deepest history to what might be the most sensational modern horror story. And what's crucial about the Amityville narrative is that the horror began with a completely undisputed, verifiable, and catastrophic event, a mass murder.
Yes, the foundation is fact. On November 13th, 1974, Ronald DeFeo Jr., who was 23 at the time, executed his parents and his 4 younger siblings, 2 boys, 2 girls, as they slept in their beds in that Dutch colonial home. He used a rifle, and the shocking lack of struggle suggested either the family was heavily sedated or the crime was committed with terrifying speed and precision.
And DeFeo's cryo defense, that's where the supernatural element was first injected into this local trauma.
Immediately, he claimed that voices in the house commanded him to commit the murders. He was convicted and sentenced to 6 consecutive life terms, but by claiming the house, rather than just himself, was the source of the evil, the physical structure itself became tainted in the public imagination.
So 13 months later, in late 1975, the stage is set for the next chapter.
George and Kathy Lutz, looking for a fresh start for their family of 5, move into the home, and they're attracted by the drastically reduced price, which was a direct result of the tragedy. They lasted exactly 28 days before fleeing in terror, abandoning most of their possessions.
The 28 Days of Terror. As chronicled in Jay Anson's best-selling book, The Amityville Horror, it became the definitive, contested, haunting case of the 20th century. And the Lutzes described this escalating cascade of terrifying, highly specific phenomena, not just, vague chills or strange noises.
The specific details are what make the story stick in your mind. George Lutz claimed he routinely woke up every single night at 3:15 a.m., the time police estimated the DeFeo murders had occurred.
Every night?
Every night. They also documented specific environmental anomalies. Swarms of large black flies appearing inside the house despite the fact that it was the dead of winter in New York. There were dramatic, inexplicable temperature drops in specific rooms, almost as if an unseen force was sucking the heat out of the air.
Yes, and they also found something physically unsettling in the house's architecture, right? The Red Room.
Yes. They discovered a small hidden room in the basement, a narrow utility area painted entirely blood red. They called it the Red Room, and they speculated it had been used in some kind of dark practice years earlier.
And then the phenomena became personal.
And distinctly malevolent. Kathy Lutz claims she was repeatedly touched or pushed by unseen forces, and she reported seeing a red-eyed, pig-like creature staring at her from a window, an image that instantly became iconic horror movie fodder.
And perhaps most disturbing were the interactions with their youngest daughter, Missy.
She began speaking to an imaginary friend named Jody. The Lutzes eventually concluded that Jody was some kind of demonic entity manipulating their child.
There were also more tactile, physical manifestations reported, which adds this layer of visceral horror. The sources detail things like a mysterious, putrid green slime oozing from the walls, sulfurous odors, and even the claim of cloven hoof prints appearing in the snow outside the house.
Suggesting the presence of something distinctly demonic, not just a ghost. But the most compelling external confirmation, the thing that really gave the story legs, came from a religious authority.
The priest.
A Catholic priest, known as Father Ray, or Father Pecoraro in the accounts, came to bless the house shortly after the Lutzes moved in. He claimed to have heard a loud, chilling, demonic voice clearly tell him, "Get out," and that he subsequently suffered physical illness and blistering on his hands, suggesting a real spiritual attack. This priestly testimony provided the story with a powerful religious underpinning.
And this story just exploded culturally thanks to Anson's book. It launched an entire horror franchise. But this fame immediately generated fierce debates.
Of course. The skeptical viewpoint focused heavily on the financial incentive and the subsequent inconsistencies that emerged.
Right, the hopes for money theory.
That's the key skeptical argument. DeFeo's own lawyer, William Weber, later claimed that he and the Lutzes had essentially manufactured the entire horror story over many bottles of wine. He suggested it was a calculated collaboration designed to profit from the DeFeo tragedy and also to provide a basis for DeFeo's own defense narrative.
And skeptics point to the Lutz's significant pre-existing financial problems as a clear motivation for a lucrative book deal.
Exactly. Furthermore, subsequent investigators like Stephen Kaplan noted profound timeline discrepancies in the Lutz story. They argued that many events they claimed happened during those 28 days could not have physically occurred in that short window. The lack of independent confirmation of the priest's story for years also fueled suspicion, as the church was notably silent on the matter for a long time.
But the Lutzes never changed their story.
They never recanted, despite decades of intense scrutiny. The priest eventually confirmed aspects of his experience as well, and that's the psychological core of it. Whether the haunting was real or a hoax, the story tapped into something essential about trauma. It explores the concept of locus of control. DeFeo claimed an external force commanded him. The Lutzes claimed an external force drove them out. The Amityville story provides an easy, terrifying answer. The source of evil isn't just human psychology, it's the very structure of the home itself.
And the sociological effect of the media saturation is undeniable. The book and the films created a kind of truth that transcended physical reality. Even if the claims were definitively debunked tomorrow, that house would still be haunted by the story.
Absolutely. Its address has been changed multiple times to discourage dark tourists, but the trauma of 1974 and the terror of 1975 have fundamentally altered the psychology of that physical structure and the surrounding community forever. It remains a perfect cultural paradox, a mystery rooted in a known location, documented in great detail, but one that may never be fully solved because the conflicting viewpoints, financial hoax versus genuine terror, have become equally entrenched cultural myths.
And speaking of places that fundamentally defy our understanding, let's leave the psychological dread of Long Island and travel to the most isolated, pristine, and potentially alien environment on Earth for our final mystery. Lake Vostok, our final frontier, takes us to the absolute limit of Earth exploration, Antarctica. Specifically, 2.5 miles straight down beneath the crushing ancient weight of the polar ice sheet. We are talking about Lake Vostok.
A freshwater body comparable in size to Lake Ontario, yet representing one of the most extreme and fascinating environments known to science.
The discovery, which was made back in the 1970s using radar soundings, was just astounding. It meant a massive body of liquid water was trapped in the coldest place on Earth, and its significance is rooted in its profound isolation.
It's been sealed off from the surface world, completely cut off from atmospheric exchange and the global biological cycle for at least 15 million years.
We need to really appreciate the physics that allows this lake to even exist. How can water stay liquid beneath ice that is colder than -50 degrees Fahrenheit?
It's a delicate balance of extreme conditions. First, you have the immense pressure exerted by 2.5 miles of ice above it. Increased pressure actually lowers the melting point of water, forcing it to remain liquid even slightly below freezing.
And the second part.
You need a sustained heat source. This geothermal heat is suspected to originate either from the underlying mantle or from the radioactive decay of elements in the bedrock beneath the lake. The combination of pressure and this localized heat creates a stable, liquid pocket in an otherwise utterly frozen environment.
And this incredible stability, combined with its profound isolation, brings us to the astrobiological significance. This is why Vostok is so much more than just a big lake.
Exactly. Vostok is our greatest terrestrial test case for life elsewhere in the solar system. If life can evolve and survive here, cut off from sunlight, relying solely on chemosynthesis or geothermal energy, and subject to that high pressure for millions of years, then we have a direct template for potential ecosystems beneath the ice shells of distant moons.
You're talking about places like Jupiter's moon Europa or Saturn's Enceladus.
The direct analogy. Both are suspected to harbor vast subsurface oceans, potentially miles deep, under enormous ice sheets.
And the comparison is chillingly relevant.
It is. Europa's ocean is estimated to be massive, maybe 60 miles deep. But the challenge is the same. How would life sustain itself without photosynthesis? Vostok proves life can survive without the sun's energy using chemical pathways. If organisms in Vostok thrive on iron or sulfur compounds, derived from hydrothermal vents or interactions with the bedrock, then the same could be true for deep-sea life on those icy moons. Vostok is essentially alien territory that just happens to be on Earth.
But getting to this pristine, ancient world, it posed a massive decades-long dilemma for the Russian scientists working there. The primary fear wasn't just the technical difficulty, it was the ethical and biological fear of contamination.
The caution was extreme, and for good reason. They spent decades drilling, but they were terrified that introducing even trace amounts of surface bacteria from the drill lubricants, the equipment, anything, could irrevocably destroy an ecosystem that had been perfectly sealed for 15 million years.
To breach the lake and then kill off the very organisms you were seeking would have been an unparalleled scientific catastrophe.
Right. They eventually used a method where the final breach was made using a thermal drill, allowing the immense pressure of the lake water to push upward, freezing instantly on the exposed drill tip, and creating a plug that prevented surface contaminants from getting in.
The scientific drama here intensified because even before they successfully breached the water, two deepening mysteries were identified. The first was structural.
That's the magnetic anomaly. It was detected in 1996 through magnetic surveys. Near the lake's southern shore, magnetic sensing equipment picked up this massive, roughly circular anomaly, a huge magnetic signature that just didn't conform to standard geological expectations for the underlying rock.
Which launched immense speculation. What could cause a massive, unexplained magnetic field in that specific location?
The theories range from the plausible to the wild. Is it a colossal, highly concentrated deposit of metallic ore, an unusual iron-rich geological formation? Or, as some of the more persistent theories suggest, could it be a buried object? Maybe a massive, iron-rich meteorite that impacted millions of years ago, or even more controversially, some kind of buried structure. The anomaly remains fundamentally unexplained and adds a physical riddle to the biological one.
And the biological mystery, however, received partial confirmation in 2012 when the Russian team finally breached the lake and successfully retrieved frozen samples of the ancient water. The analysis was groundbreaking.
Immediately groundbreaking. They didn't just find one or two hardy organisms. The analysis revealed thousands of species of bacteria, some completely unknown to science, thriving in those high-pressure, low-nutrient, zero-sunlight conditions. It proved definitively that life finds a way, even where the energy source we rely on, most solar energy, is completely absent. It's a snapshot of a deep, dark biosphere.
But that discovery only amplified the truly unsolved questions, didn't it?
It did. The lake is enormous, and its maximum depths reach about 1,600 feet in places. We only have samples from the very top where the lake meets the ice. Could larger, more complex organisms, maybe fish or deep-sea invertebrates, exist in Vostok's black depths? Organisms that have evolved separately, feeding off chemicals, geothermal heat, or the vast population of known bacteria. We have yet to access that core ecosystem.
And if you consider the time scale, the mystery becomes even deeper. Earth was a radically different planet 15 million years ago when Vostok was sealed off. The organisms down there aren't just surviving, they represent an evolutionary path that has long been extinct on the surface. They are life forms perfectly adapted to a specific, ancient version of Earth that we can no longer observe anywhere else.
And we still have that enormous, persistent question of the magnetic anomaly. Full, non-contaminating exploration of the lake's vast depths and shorelines remains impossible with our current technology. Vostok stands as this profound reminder that even on Earth, deep in the frozen crust, we have frontiers that are just as alien and unexplored as anything we might find in space. Hashtag tag outro.
It has been an incredible synthesis of research, spanning the biological, the historical, the psychological, and the astrobiological. We traveled from the dense concealing swamps of the Congo to the tragic, historically vindicated ruins of the Amazon, through the culturally haunting streets of Amityville, and finally, under the crushing ice of Antarctica.
And every single one of these mysteries we discussed requires a completely distinct approach to knowledge. The search for Mokele-Mbembe demands definitive biological proof. The quest for Z required us to abandon historical prejudice and embrace cutting-edge technology like LiDAR to correct our past assumptions about human development.
Amityville forces us into deep psychological deconstruction to separate genuine trauma from what might be profitable hoaxes.
And Vostok requires technological ingenuity and astrobiological foresight just to safely analyze an ancient ecosystem without destroying it.
So, after chasing all these shadows and testing these boundaries, why do these global mysteries endure? What is the psychological appeal that keeps us pouring funds, risking lives, and writing books about them?
I think they endure because they fundamentally challenge the limits of what we know. Mokele-Mbembe and Vostok suggest that our biological timelines and geological boundaries are potentially incomplete. Z challenged established history and proves that our understanding of past human sophistication was profoundly wrong.
In Amityville, it exposes a raw vulnerability, that sometimes the chaos isn't lurking at the edge of the map, it's infesting the one place we deem safe, our own home.
Exactly. They collectively remind us that no matter how sophisticated our technology becomes, the map of Earth still has meaningful, empty spaces.
And that idea of limits leads us to our final provocative thought for you to mull over as you transition back to your day. We've covered tragedy, failure, and vindication. Which reality is ultimately more unsettling to contemplate? A mystery that is definitively solved, proving a catastrophic, enormous historical event happened, like the vindication of Fawcett's claims of massive lost civilizations, which implies that millions of people were simply erased from global memory.
Or is it more unsettling to contemplate a mystery that remains fundamentally open and unsolved, suggesting that enormous life, or forces we fundamentally don't understand, are still operating right here on Earth, like a sauropod surviving in the deep Congo, or that massive, unexplained magnetic anomaly persisting beneath the pristine solitude of Lake Vostok?
The answers, perhaps, are still waiting in the swamps, the ruins, and the deep, dark ice. Until the next deep dive, keep questioning the consensus.